yeah, the websites that you can get lost into that you created, rather than there's not a method to our madness. We just allow it
Yeah,
to
doesn't
happen,
have
and
to be.
that adds.
Yeah. Anyway, here's the painting. It's like oh, I don't know if the lighting is good enough in here, but
I see it. That's good.
yeah.
Yeah, it's very vivid colors.
So it's this interpretation of what the bottom of the ocean looks like when I'm snorkeling, because I've been doing quite a bit of swimming in the ocean here, and you know, it was kind of illustrating this poem. Let me see. It's on my website, so I'll just put it up. It's quite a yeoman one.
That looked like a Matisse to me. It looked like the water lilies, which is the surface of a body of water and the sun reflecting into it. It reminds me of that. But you said it's the bottom, actually, of the ocean that you're
Yeah,
capturing.
because the thing is, like, it doesn't actually look blue. It's kind of like sandy because of the sand that's kicked up from the ocean's bottom, and at the same time, there's like, it's kind of, well, the waves keep disturbing the forms. So like the yellow is a bit like the sand, and you know, like it's more about the movement of the water, really.
And the wave is disturbing the form.
Yeah.
Is there anything else about that when the wave is disturbing the form?
Oh, it's the movement that makes it the ocean, right? It's the movement that makes it an ocean. So yeah, anyway, the poem here is why fish are not blind. What is this face without eyes, but whose every surface is eyes? I plunge into and against oceans, not because I am not afraid, but because it is necessary to brave them. The bream know that you are in their dream. They may defend it. In the shallows, snook hover over the sandlands as ghosts. If you do not peer into the kingdoms under the waves, there's no way you can extract the pearl. Everywhere the color has come out of these inimitable, sacred, missing flaws. So, yeah, that's the poem, and then that's the painting. Yeah. So,
thank you. Maybe if we're going to post this on the forum, I would love to see if you could give us the written form of the poem. I heard you speak it. It was lovely. I would love to see it on the page as well, if that's possible. And then with that picture, it would be so cool to see the picture, the poem, and you're talking and you're speaking. I think that's
I figured you need to make a video out of this, but I like
it's more of, I think it's more of an interview style where we're all interviewing one another in a way.
Sure.
And sharing our process, and you know, finding the comfort zone where you're safe enough but not too safe, because I think there's something about performance which is a little destabilizing, and we want to do that in a way that's creative. As we mentioned before, it's really important that people feel like they're in an environment or they're in a safe enough space so that they can go a little deeper than they would usually. And so that's why I'm interested in using language in a way that's sort of odd, because I'm wanting to open up how this person is using her language and what's underneath it, what's above it, what's happening right before it, what's after it. I'm really interested in that stuff. And also, it's not just who owns the narrative, it's how that narrative is interpreted. And I think that's what every writer wants to know. It's like, I already done this, I finished it. I want to know what other people think about it. So I think that's the tension between evaluation and creation, because it's you have to be very careful about evaluating something before it's ready to be evaluated. Because I've seen a lot of workshops, writing workshops, where people were, something was criticized and they got distracted and they weren't able to catch it back again. You know, that original inspiration got lost. So those are the kind of concerns I have, is how do we differentiate the critic from the dreamer, from the realist who has to put it all together. And Doug, by the way, has been a great contributor here, and I like his spontaneity. He has spontaneous poems that come through him, and he's a great journaler too, because he shares some of his drawings with us, which I think it's quite fascinating how we can have these interplays between a sketch, a doodle, a drawing, some dream. I'm a big dreamer. I dream. I kept a dream journal since I was very, very young, and they were so bizarre. I just thought this is better than any movie I've ever seen.
I feel the same way. I mean, like, I'm just like, if I could make my dreams into movies, like, directly.
Sure.
Oh,
Sure.
Put everybody in the film business out of business.
So this is what I'm interested in. It's a form of dream yoga, but can we do dream yoga together? Can we?
What is dream yoga?
Well, dream yoga. Well, Doug knows about my interest in social dreaming. I'm drawing upon a lot of this work here from a book from a guy named Gordon Lawrence. He's writing about social dreaming, and it's sort of the idea here that, you know, tribes, or, you know, people in the magical and mythical age, perhaps before the internet, before they had even writing tools, they would get together and they would talk about, you know, they would have a dream. And sometimes dreams were considered extremely important and have a predictive value. So people were listened to. Even children's dreams were important. So I sort of have a yearning for that kind of immersive capacity that people have to, like, enter into the dream world together. And I think the best art does that for people. And at any rate, I wanted to get Doug in here and maybe invite him to reflect a little bit on maybe the different experiments that we've done, because Doug and I and others have done some of the social dreaming stuff together, and maybe what would happen next and how we could get, you know, Judith has already offered us a great deal. And you've actually read her novel, which I haven't done. But I was wondering how we could create a container, a safe enough container, so that we could sponsor one another as writers or as people, you know, trying to make sense of a very complex world. And that's sort of my mission in life, is how do we create these collaborative social dreaming spaces? So Doug, is there anything else you want to add? I know you're out in the cold, so I'm very sympathetic towards you. I'm not here in the warm, so
it's above freezing, so that's good enough for me. But
wow, where exactly are you, Doug?
So I have somewhere to be at in about, well, I don't know, 30 minutes or an hour, and so I'm kind of in between. I thought I could make it to another location in time, but I couldn't. So I'm at a truck stop with a McDonald's and another restaurant. So I stopped by the McDonald's hoping that it would be quiet this time of day, but it's packed. But that's no matter. I'm outside. There's an electrical unit right below me. That's my table, my desk. Then I have nice shelter with this from the wind with this brick wall here. So I'm good to go.
The sky is very beautiful behind you, but it does look cold.
Yes, it is very. So dream yoga is akin to the practice of illusory forms, which is very akin to idealism, which is, yeah, I guess you started the Bernardo Castro book as well, but you're unable to participate in the conversations. But essentially, it's the idea of the world. The world is our representation. It's just a mental subjective process. So ideally, this cloud blanket above me is perhaps created in my own mind, or the bigger mind, the mind at large, as they say. But I guess in relation to what Johnny's talking about, and the group, the intimate quality, I don't want to go through a history lesson of the cosmos because I haven't been there the whole time, I'm just a volunteer in the background. The two main individuals that kind of kept it all together and keep it going are Marco and Caroline. And they both have lots of personal things going on. But there's a lot of plans always in the works of writers groups, of creating this or that. And but personally, I'm here to support others. I'm not a writer. I'm not. It happens occasionally, and I'm interested in it. I don't have movies playing in my mind that would sell if they could be made real, if that makes sense. So I take what I can get from others, and that kind of becomes my story, and all mixes together very nicely. So I'm interested in the supporting. So I did read your book because that's just who I am personally, and that's my role that I play. I'm not going the criticism part is difficult for me, a challenge, or helping you shape your craft is not necessarily my forte. But the idea, I think, I don't know what you and Johnny talked about in the first discussion, or what led to this discussion. So maybe that would help
Doug,
if I understand.
look, the fact that
where
you
guys
read
are
my
coming
book
from.
is the reason why I'm still engaging with this community. Like the fact that somebody like looked at my profile and decided to read an entire novel of somebody they never met, because I joined the site, like made me think that there are good people on here, you know? Like, so I would say, you know, like don't discount yourself. And anyway, anyone who has written anything and created anything is already a writer. I keep telling people this. Like, there are poets whose entire reputation is on one poem, and nobody has read anything else by them, but they have one great poem. They are a poet. It's not about quantity here. And sometimes it's not even about whether you're published. I mean, maybe it is a bit
about Doug's
Neoplatonist or something, but I feel like if something is created, it's out there.
I can't find the book that I'm reading right now. Oh, here it is. Let me show it to you. I don't know. Did you read the Castrop book, Judy? Excuse me, Judith. I'm calling you Judy.
Sorry? What? Which book?
Did you, Doug? You mentioned Castrop, the idealism, and
I just read the introduction, the front matter, but I couldn't make the meeting because it was at 3 a.m.
So you are familiar with Castrop, but I'm reading this book, The Simulation Hypothesis, and it's looking at AI and different models of AI and as metaphors for something that may be happening at a deeper level. And I'm very curious about that, because I think as I write, I'm very aware of a god or a daemon or a silent partner who's always there. And that's where my allegiance is. And I enter into this world of fragmentation and urban decay, because I live in Manhattan, or corporate pornography. You know, I think you would understand that, Judith, how the buildings around us are just turning into these corporate monoliths, you know, and they're springing up overnight, and they're gobbling up entire neighborhoods. They're leveling beautiful old neighborhoods and turning them into these corporate monstrosities. But I think the idea of we're living in a simulation, sort of that matrix idea, I think is very compelling and a very Gnostic kind of orientation. And you and I talked about Gnosticism briefly.
I think it's very compelling, partly because people are starting to think of themselves more and more in metaphors of technology, which I actually think is actually not necessarily a healthy thing. because
agree.
you know, like, have you heard of Jaron Lanier's "You Are Not a Gadget"? Like, the title
Yes.
of the book is literally "You Are Not a Gadget."
Yeah.
I mean, our electronics are trying to ape us.
That's
I
right.
don't think we should be trying to ape them. I
That's
really don't think so. And I think the other danger of trying to think of the world as a simulation is that the logical conclusion to that is that in that case, what we do here doesn't matter. You know what I mean? I mean,
I
like, so that scares me actually, because people. I mean, I've never been a gamer because killing people doesn't interest me. I don't know. I mean, that seems to be the majority of the games that people play online. And if you are continuously training yourself to kill people in a simulation, and then you then say that we are living in a simulation, then, you know, like, what becomes the ethical difference between killing someone in a computer game and killing someone in real life? You know, like, I mean, I feel like that's a really dangerous line you don't want to cross. um, I like the you know, like the philosophical sort of like, I guess, thought experiments that we might be in a simulation, because it's true that all of the that all of the information that we know of are through our synapses and our senses and our neurons and all that. But the fact is that this is not a reality that we created. I mean, I just don't think it is. The ones that we are creating do not have the you know, like uh the level of detail and complexity that our world does have.
Oh, I agree. I agree.
Yeah.
I think the idea that we are going to produce technology which is going to be out, more advanced than the brain or our human cognition or our bodies moving around in space, I think it's absurd. I think but I am curious about this guy Verk, who has a spin on the simulation, that simulation hypothesis, that I think is interesting, because he's sort of taking this whole idea of a kind of Neoplatonic worldview that I find very attractive, where there are, there's extraterrestrials, there's angels, there's aliens who are and have been visiting humanity for centuries, if not from the very or in first beginnings on this planet. And I find that there's these communiques that are happening between something that's outside
Mm-hmm.
the matrix and those of us who are inside the matrix. But it isn't like a top-down kind of instruction from the board. It's much more of an interplay of relationships, of delicate relationships. Some are visible and some are invisible. And I think this is the heart of so much of our religiosity and our numinous experiences, is that they do feel like they're not coming from our individual separate little egos, but something like that, what you were talking about as earth lightning. And so I find that kind of interesting. And that the idea that there's phenomena that we're witnessing of a paranormal nature, very widespread. You're seeing near-death experience, lucid dreaming, out-of-body experiences, telepathic experiences, precognitive experiences, remote viewing. These are all what some authors called a contact modalities. So in a sense, I believe we're all touching with our minds many other levels, even perhaps beyond the human. And we're also, as well as animals and plants. So I think these are the kind of things that fascinate me. And some of it's pretty far out, but I showed this to you, Judith, the other day. I'll show it to Doug. We're just showing like you were doing your drawings to the group, because I think they're communications. But this is sort of what I'm working with right now. This is my future, okay? And this is my past. These are both sculptures by Michelangelo. This is his last sculpture, which was not finished. It's sort of like a Madonna with her crucified son, but it's in a very, it seems to me like in an astral communication, sort of in between the subtle and the physical. Whereas this is early in Michelangelo's career. This is definitely has boundaries. You know, this is a very strong masculine figure, very erotic, probably at the beginnings of the Renaissance. This was like the icon of Western civilization, right? And so in between these two sculptures from Michelangelo, I have all these sketches and doodles. And this is what I'm calling coordinating the third ear with the third eye. So this is sort of my challenge. I'm just offering this to you because it's simply raw and it's visual and it's sort of, oh, in the imaginal realm, working with the imaginal. So here is a sort of a subtle field around a human form. So I think these are all, you know, I'm working with these Gnostic, what I would call Gnostic voices. Because I can hear voices that come through me that don't belong to me. They even come from I've had dreams where I've awakened in the middle of the night and I'm performing a very almost physically impossible posture. And I've done a lot of yoga and I know it would take me, it would be almost very hard for me to do that in my waking state. But I'm waking up in the middle of the night in this posture and speaking a language that sounds to me, sort of like Mandarin, which is something I've never spoken, but it has that quality, and accompanied with all kinds of weird visions and symbols, and I think that I'm very curious about. So I'm very drawn to that idea that we could be in communication with, you know, there's theories of reincarnation, there's Plato's allegory of the cave, but there are light beings. Some have called it, you know, and UFO abductions in our popular culture. So these are the kind of things I'm working with. And
yeah, I think that it's not in dispute in most cultures except for Enlightenment materialism that there are spiritual beings. But I will also say that almost every culture that has a worldview in which there are spiritual beings have classified them as positive and negative, and that what is unique about sort of burgeoning neo-paganism, I guess, or whatever you want to call people who are rejecting materialism now, is to assume that all of them are good, which I think is very unwise. Because if you've got thousands of years of human history telling you that there are a lot of forces which are, you know, for lack of a better word, evil, or at least negative, you want to be careful with which ones you mess with. Yeah. You know, it's yeah, I mean, whether I think that probably our language is this stuff is beyond our language or ability to explain, but yeah, definitely I can, you know, when it comes to accounts of, say, UFO abductions, for example, I've never felt good about any of that. I mean, the fact that people are supposedly taken by force and subject to all kinds of terrible, you know, experiments. Those don't sound like good beings, whatever they are. You know, regardless of what the ultimate conclusion is of the people who have experienced it. It doesn't sound like they have good ethics, if you put it in that way. You know, I mean, yeah, it's
So
yeah,
I
it's a
think,
strange thing.
I'm sorry, Doug, were you going to say something? I think you're raising a major concern I have is about the boundary conditions of these, when how these Gnostic, I'm calling them Gnostic voices, but Gnosticism is a very complex tradition, but I think
Sure.
it's the outsider, the one or the groups who were not listened to by the dominant discourse and who had to go underground. And yet those what they learned underground when they were experimenting together, some of it got codified, some of it got put down on paper. They had scrolls and they hid them in jars and buried them in the desert, and they've been rediscovered. So we know about them from their own voices rather than from the distortions of the dominant discourse, which branded them heretics. So that's where I'm coming from, those outsider voices that were not heard, and they sort of haunt our imaginations, I believe.
Yeah, I think those are really important. I mean, obviously, whoever are the people who have power are the ones that keep, you know, like keep the canon essentially.
That's right.
Whichever way you want to define canon, but you know, that includes the Bible as well. That's the canon in the original usage of the word. You know, I mean, it's tough for me because I feel like, you know, like a lot of obviously a lot of defending of a hierarchy has been done using, you know, like those power structures, but at the same time, you know, like somebody has to draw a line somewhere at some point.
Right. Between
but,
private
yeah.
and the public. Yeah.
Yeah, but having said that, you know, like the prophetic is always going to come from the edges, and is always going to be essentially, you know, like rejected in a way. You know, like it's always weird.
Yes.
You see, have you seen what the prophets in the Bible did? Like,
Elijah and the
stuff is
chariots.
weird. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
So this is. What about you, Doug? Is there something different or something? I see you're in a car now. Are you traveling? Can you talk?
I'm hands-free. I'm not driving, so
Okay.
I'm warming up. But
What happens next? What happens next? Out of this conversation and other conversations, can we imagine what happens next? Because I think this is a very good beginning we've had today with Judith. And you and I, of course, are old timers, Doug. We've been doing this for quite a while. But how can we move forward with some of the themes and motifs that are appearing, I think, in this conversation and other conversations? Do you have anything coming to you?
Just where we left off right there was the weirdness aspect, and yeah, the ancient times or the magical realms that were part of life long time ago were definitely strange. And I'm wondering, as we step out of this structured material type of mentality, and we're able to free up thinking, free up what's considered good or bad knowledge, and just let it exist. How weird can we get? It seems the more that we tune into what we're interested here, the weirder it gets, and the greater the story capacity can be. So that was just a comment I wanted to make, that ties into what you're talking about, and where we go from here. It is good to have a little bit of both, the structure, because we could just have free form all over the place and eventually not go anywhere or not attain any sort of goals. Or if you're writing a novel, Judith, our talk here may or may not contribute to assisting you in that direction that you'd like to go. So it is good to have a good starting point, and then leave as as we like to say, leave the train open enough and the container contained enough to make something great happen. Personally, I don't know where I'm going to be 1 minute from the next right now. Work is pretty a lot busier than I expected. We picked up, we're contracted work, and we have a new contract, and the old one has less work, but the new one keeps trickling up with new unexpected weekly tasks. So I can't really commit to times and places at this point. Spontaneity works out for me, like this conversation here. But we can arrange anything at any time, especially with our time zone difference. It's, as Judith is saying, it's difficult to be at something at 3 in the morning. But this time works out great. So that's good to know. We have others interested in a writers group. I think that thread was started up a few weeks ago and kind of fizzled out because there's a lot going on. But I like the idea of 2, 3, 4, 5 individuals coming together for a specific purpose. Previously, we only had 1 or 2 things going on, and everybody would kind of latch onto that. But it would be good to cater to individual needs or desires or outcomes. And I think we have the ability to do that as long as it's structured enough or
Well, really, as long as we have a time that we'll meet up. Because the thing is that, like, I think, there's inherent value in conversation in and of itself. Like, there doesn't have to be a purpose to a conversation, aside from just getting to know each other.
Today we
right.
Today's conversation was sort of generated out of a previous conversation that I had with Judith, which we didn't record, but I'm quoting from that. You were talking about the intro thread, having an intro thread, and how it's been difficult for you, Judith, to like figure out all these conversations have already started. So how do you enter into that weave of different voices already talking? And I feel you. I mean, I know that must be a challenge. So I'm hoping that you're feeling welcome. And we're recording this now. And if it feels good for you to show this to our community, I think it would be great to give the signal to others who may be lurking and they want to make a transition so that they can be direct participant observers in the mix with us, that you're welcome. And also we have to appreciate the sensitivity of, how do you enter into a social system that's already has an identity, and you're bringing in new faces and new voices, and how do we accommodate that? I think these are challenges in this technologically driven kind of network we're in, because I had to get out of social media almost entirely because it was so negative to my functioning as a writer. I found I couldn't be on Facebook and write at the same time. So I think there is something about solitude and being solitary on occasion, especially if you want to write, and having a public discourse event you can join. Because I think to me, there's an element of like, I think we all want to be public intellectuals. There was an age where there were actual public intellectuals, people who got together and talked about books and thinking and literature. And I sort of miss that, because I think our public discourse is so bad, certainly in our politics. So part of my mission to be here, and when Marco invited me to join, was we both wanted to get out of Facebook world and do something different, although we didn't have we've tried to define it, but like all definitions, they slip and slide all over the place. So I love the idea, as both of you had seemed to be talking about, like there's a flow and there's also disciplined flow. And I think the balance between discipline and flow is really important, especially if you're making a decision to, okay, we're going to read this book and we're going to get together on these dates and times, and we're going to talk about that chapter. I think that's discipline, and that's a structure. But what we do with that could be very anarchic and all over the place. And I think we want to encourage that, as we've been doing today. I think we've been practicing what I'm preaching right now. So I just want to thank you both for this very wonderful way to start a Sunday morning. And I know we're on a time frame here, and I don't know, maybe we have 10 or 15 minutes, Doug. What's your time frame?
Yeah, I have 10 minutes before I need to start driving, and I have just one question for Judith.
Yeah.
As to, and maybe you and Johnny discussed it in the previous conversation, but what specifically would help you navigate the site more, or feel more welcome, or insert whatever you're feeling at this time? What would help you feel more either involved, integrated into the community? And
Or supported.
I know, supported as well. I know previously a simple thing that we did was a thread that was This Week in Cosmos, and it had all the events going on, or perhaps some of the threads that were a summary of what was going on, and a summary of the events and links to the events all in one place. So we hope I can potentially start that up this week or the next. That way we at least know what's going on. As to the back end or the history of the site, the easiest way to do that is what you did, and just click on random things, and eventually you'll pick up on what might interest you. But yeah, do you have any questions or anything that you might, or feedback?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's all good because I'm talking to you guys now. I mean that's great, right? Like we managed to get it to happen. So it's good. I think I lucked out in that I managed to get on the site at the same time that Johnny was on there, because I felt like I related most of his posts, especially whenever he was protesting that everybody was doing too much left brain stuff on every discussion. And that it's not that I can't do analysis, is that I have not read this stuff. You know what I mean? I don't know what I don't know what the major thinkers are on the people's favorite philosophers or whatever, and texts that they're talking about. And when I have tried to join a reading group, it's at an impossible time for me. And I understand if somebody is already an established group, they're not going to shift the time for the one person who is new to join it. I mean, but as a result, you're not going to get new people, because you know, I mean, who's going to get up at 3 a.m.? It's not good for my mental health
Right.
to be up at 3 a.m. It would be a very bad idea. So yeah, I mean, I don't think I can go in that way. Even if I was joining a reading group from the start, which I tried to do. So, you know, I mean, yeah. So yeah, that's the downside of my experience. But this is great. So I'm not complaining, really.
Yeah, so even with all those constraints, these asynchronous communications, different time zones, people have to work and make a living and take care of the kids. How do you get a chance to read books and share your knowledge or your emerging new stuff that's coming through? I think these are really, really big challenges, and I think we are trying to do the best we can with what we've got. And I think it's also, I'm not one who wants to just, the more faces and more voices, the better. I don't think that's necessarily true. I think more competent people, the better. And so we want people who love to read, who have points of view already, and who are also not experts necessarily in everything and need to learn and want to ask good questions of maybe someone who is expert. So I'm very gratified that there are a lot of areas where I don't have a lot of knowledge and I don't understand, but there's some people who do. Like we have some people here who are physicists, so I can ask these physicists directly a really dumb, naive question. And I think there's a real benefit in naivete. So I think this has been a very enjoyable experience for me today. And what I would like to have happen is if this feels okay with Judith, and if Doug, you think this sounds good, is to like post this to our community with the drawing. If you could show us that drawing, well, actually, if we have a video, they will see the drawing. But I think the value of the printed poem, along with your vocal performance of the poem, is extremely. I think that's really great because I think it's really wonderful for me to read a poem and then to hear the poet recite the poem. There's a lot of information that comes through that, through the voice and the written word. So anyway, that's my spiel about what I would like to have happen next is something like that. Like this could be a presentation. We don't have to edit it at all. I actually do not like editing. I think we should let it be raw. And I like people when they hem and haw and don't have the answer to everything. I think that's extremely important that we preserve that human, the ambiguity and the voice and the gesture and the eyes and the expression. I think that's what's beautiful about people. That we're not talking heads. We're gesturing. We're animals with bodies, and we're with all these energies flowing through us, and we're doing the best we can to communicate, to make adequate translations for one another. So that's my spiel, and I think we've done I think this intro thread that we've been doing today, featuring Judith. I'm really looking forward to reading her novel. I haven't had a chance to do that, and when I have,
Oh, by the way, I should just show you the novel since. Yeah, that's my novel.
I love the title.
Yeah,
I think it's fantastic.
So it's Sophia and the Utopia Machine. I think it's probably reversed in the video, but it's it is, right?
The tiger's
like
name is Milton, right?
Yes, the tiger's name is Milton. Yeah,
I love it. Well, I'm looking forward to reading this and having more dialogues than we've had today. I feel like we've done this has been fun today, and I hope we can continue to keep it going.
Yeah, cool.
Any final thoughts from you guys, Doug or Judith? Is there anything else you want to add? Because I know we're wrapping up. I have a few minutes left.
Yeah, just briefly that as this was spontaneous, I feel what I ideally would like to have happen on the site is for anybody, including myself, if we have just a good thought that needs to be worked out or a poem that needs to be heard. There are many, like you said earlier, Judith, that if you don't tap into or receive what comes from above and translate it or transcribe it or get it down, then it gets lost. But then at the same time, even if you have it on paper or somebody else has put it on paper, you also need multiple people sometimes to interpret it or explain it. So just like this conversation, I came into it, I didn't know exactly what was going to be discussed, and I'm glad I'm here and not somewhere else. And
that's great.
These type of conversations can arise at any time. You can post on it can be anything on the site, your own poetry, a plug for anything, or I was reading Milton just the other day and I really like this passage, but I don't know what it means. Or it would be nice to be able to make something like this happen instantly. So we just click the Zoom line and we're talking to each other, because like you two noticed, it's hard to just type it out. So hey, let's get together, and you made it happen, and it happened, and that can happen at any time. And I'd like to see more of it as we move along and grow together.
We also have a Milton. We're doing book 4, I think on Wednesday at 10 Mountain. No, it's Eastern Standard Time. It's at 10 a.m. And that may be too late for you, Judith, but I would love it if you could join us because you're already. This is this Wednesday.
So it would be.
So this Wednesday, 10 a.m. your time?
It would be at the time right now.
Yeah.
Which would be now. Wednesday. Let me check my calendar.
That might be too late for you, but I know you've had experience with Milton, and I would love to hear your insights into Milton as we're all exploring. And Doug, we haven't seen you there for a while. I hope you can join us too for some of the Milton calls because we're almost halfway through. This is book 4.
I don't know if I have my copy of Paradise Lost with me, but it might be in Singapore. But I guess I can get a digital copy of it. Let's see.
But at any rate, if you can join us, that would be great. And Doug, I hope you can join us again too. We're focusing on reciting it out loud and using our voice.
Yes.
So that's it's sort of a very theatrical kind of metaphor we're using, like we're at a rehearsal, doing a play. And there's some evidence that Milton actually designed this to be a play. He wanted to have a mask, you know, those people, aristocrats would do these theatricals where they would put on masks and perform. And he may have intended this to be like that, a mask. And anyway, I think that would be a lot of fun to.
Yeah, I think I could probably make it on Wednesday because it would just be 12 hours ahead for me. And so that's like a reasonable time. As I said, it's actually easier for me to get on with EST than any of the other American time zones. Because 12 hours is actually a decent. I mean, basically my morning is your evening is my morning. So
it's just good to. We have a core group. Others can come and go when they can join us, but there's no like. We'll move on even if people don't show up because we're very dedicated. But it's been basically Marco, Jeffrey, and myself have been very consistent, and others come and go when they can. And I think that's great that we have spontaneity and new people may come in and check it out, but that we have enough of a core that can hold it so that it's stable. And I think that's a problem we've had over and over again is groups start, but they don't finish anything. If they don't finish anything, for me, that's not a good sign because I have enough unfinished projects already in my life. However, I also admit there's a such thing as an open closure, you know, where you open up something and you can't close it because there's no finish. But I think that some of the things we've started have been very compelling, and we've finished quite a bit. I mean, we've read Aurobindo and we've read Sean Gebser. These are gigantic tomes. We're reading Milton right now. So I think it's that kind of ambition to finish these big books that are hard to read on your own. I think this is very, very exciting because I think we're keeping something alive in our culture as the humanities are under siege right now, just about everywhere. So I think it's very important that we share public time, lots of it, give attention to each other, and give us enough time to figure stuff out together. So thank you very much. I've really enjoyed this.
I have an idea. Have either of you heard of The Artist's Way?
I have, actually. The Author's Way?
The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. It's basically a self-teaching course of 12 weeks to increase your creativity. I've done it a few times and it always works. I mean, like my current artistic productivity is probably like the result of having just done it again. So if you haven't done it if you want to do it in a group, I can always do it again. And the thing is that I guess I've only ever done it in the iteration. You've got it, right? No.
Do you know
no, no.
this? I don't have that one, but I have this as another wonderful creativity. Drawing on the right side of the brain.
Yeah, I've heard of that one. I haven't read that one. Actually.
I haven't done this one, but I think these are the kind of tools that we have available to us. Like you mentioned.
That one is really good. So I've always done it reading the chapter a week and doing the morning pages and the artist date, which is the two like main things that you do in the week. But I have never done the additional activities. So I was wondering if maybe people might want to do those together, because if you have somebody to be accountable to, you're more likely to do it, I think. And some of them are quite interesting. Like, I don't know, doing making a collage out of old magazines of things that you like, or things like that, which I think like Johnny has already done.
Yeah, I do that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I think what would be fun for us, this is just riffing on what you just said, if we could have something that's experiential, where people would come in. If you have an exercise that really works for you, like right now I'm working on, this is sacred geometry. This is inspired by Rudolf Steiner. I just did I'm doing some classes on sacred geometry at the Rudolf Steiner studio nearby. I did this yesterday. And so whatever we're engaged in, it's like a show and tell. If we could have a group where we get up and, I'm working with this technique, and this is what working with this technique is produced. Here, it could be a drawing, it could be a poem, it could be a dream, it could be a dance. I've gotten up and danced. So it's kind of embarrassing, but I've done it. And I think there's
that sounds great, actually.
I think in the third book that we're doing in Milton, the first half hour I did some vocal exercises with the group, and working with the somatic intelligence, working with gesture and language, because I think Milton is full of implied gesture. Anyway, I think that would be fun. So if you found an exercise that you really like from Judith Cameron, and you could bring that in, and you could bring in your unique way of working with that. Or Doug is a great journaler, and he has some very, I think, captivating drawings, and as well as poems that he's offered spontaneously. And I think that's, if we could have a forum where we could do that, and capture the little doodles on the back of a cocktail napkin. I really think those are important. Those little tangential things that we don't really ever get to formulate, but they're there in the background, sort of coming and going. I like to give attention to the things that we're not giving attention to, because I think that's where sometimes the idea for a novel or a play come from, like you mentioned earlier. It's that chance encounter, that conversation you overhear at the cafe or something. So I think these are all great ideas. So thanks to all of you. And I think we can, our next meetup, whenever that is, we'll maybe have thought about this and reflected upon it, and have some actual ideas about how we can make it happen.
Thanks for inviting me. I do need to go now, but it's been a pleasure.
Well, can we upload this recording? Can you do that, Doug? Is that okay with you?
I will attempt.
Yeah, I think that's fine. I spoke today with the understanding I might be recorded, so I think.
Good.
Yeah.
If everyone's okay of making this public, I'm all for it, because I think we need to get the word out there, and if people see this and they're enjoying it, they can join us. So, Doug, did you have to leave? I guess he did.
I think he's gone. Do you wanna? Do you have something to do right now, or? Because I can talk for longer, but
I think I have to wrap. I'm going to a play. I'm going to a matinee.
Oh, are you?
Yeah.
What are you going to watch?
It's too bad you're not here in New York. You could come with me. I'm going over to.
I wish.
It's a play over on St. Mark's Place. Yeah.
What's it about?
I'm not sure. It's like a one act, and it's sort of like I think it's sort of a workshop production. but I'm going to go see it. So I'll let you know. I'll give you a review the next time I see you.
Oh, okay.
So
So
I don't go to
you don't even know the title of it?
No, I don't. I was invited to it, so I don't really, you know, I'm sort of invited to just be a friendly audience member. And it may end up being a production that goes somewhere else. So, you know, it's one of those trial by error kind of productions. So I'm looking forward to it. And yeah, I think this went really well. I'm really enjoying this. And I'm glad you're here. And I think I'm having a lot of ideas come to me right now, but I'm going to take a few notes and make a few drawings, and maybe we can start up something, do some sort of mutual project, and get some other people to join us. I think we have a lot of ideas. So whatever comes up for you, share it on the forum, and things that you didn't get a chance to say. I think the great thing about having these archives is, you know, you can go back over something that you know, communication you have with other people, but it was really complicated. So I've noticed that when I review some of these, I'm like amazed at all the things that I missed. So that's what I think the value of this is. It's not like taking notes, you know, you can just sit there and become immersed in your conversation, so you don't have to think about it too much. And because it's all being recorded, you can look back at it and say, oh yeah, that was something I didn't develop, or this is something I heard that I didn't hear the first time. Because I think it's you know, really important that we have friends like we're establishing now, relationships in different places around the world right now. That we have this technology, even though it's very awkward, getting the time zones right, so that people can, you know, work out loud with other people. Because I'm concerned we're all getting in our little silos, you know, getting trapped in front of our devices and our computers, and we're turning into robots. You know? I think that's the worst of all possible worlds. So we have to sort of figure out how can we use this technology, and also take it out into the local communities we're members of, and try to share it. And that's helped. I've been able to, because I had this forum and I'm able to rehearse certain things, I can go out into the world, and I feel supported to, you know, share things I may not usually have shared because I didn't, you know, have a good idea about what I wanted to talk about, but now I can. So I think there's some real therapeutic benefits from this, doing this.
That's cool. Can you tell me about the painting behind you?
Oh yes, it's I
can't see it properly, but I'd love to see. I've been noticing it in the background, but I can only see the vague shapes.
Yeah, I can't take it down because it's too big. But it's a collage of roses and angels and little cherubs. And yeah, I found it on the street, and I liked it because I like the colors, and it's very Baroque and kind of and I like the energy of roses and children, because I tend to have a very downer imagination sometimes because I live in Manhattan. You know what it's like, and I'm trying to create a sanctuary for myself so that I have
fair enough.
And I have drawings that give me a feeling of space and lightness, and so thank you for asking. Yeah, I have that up there. And I see you have some drawings back there too. Are those yours? Are they from somebody else?
Those three on the left are mine.
Oh wow!
They are illustrations of To the Lighthouse by Virginia Woolf.
Oh, I love it.
And I actually have the link. I have them on my website as a slideshow. Actually, I can post it on the link. Hang on. Just quickly, so you can see the whole collection.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah.
That's another great novel, Virginia Woolf. We should do something on A Room of Your Own. I think she wrote that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, she's awesome.
I read that. It's still very resonant today.
It's still very resonant today.
Yeah, for sure.
So I guess I better keep going.
Okay.
So
Um,
I've loved this conversation. I hope you have a fabulous evening.
thank you.
Dreams, I hope. And I'm getting ready to go out into the world, the mean streets of Manhattan.
Good luck.
Thank you. Thank you so
Okay.
much.
Enjoy the play.
I've had fun, and we'll see you next time.
Okay.
And Doug will do some of the technical stuff. He'll upload this for us, and he'll probably put some sort of introductory
All right.
description. Ciao.
Okay. Bye.